Christian Gulag.
Atheist George Bushes.
There are some things that you just want to crack wise about.
The shiny magic underwear.
Star-bellied Sneeches.
It's just the fact that it's adversely affecting their narrative.
This is not the Alex Jones show.
They're a backdoor way for the religious to use taxpayer money.
Around 2006, we redefined planning.
It's just, I don't know, it doesn't even register as on my give a shit meter. I fucking hate saying atheist movement.
Atheism Plus. Buy the t-shirt. Ride the ride.
You stick to your guns all the time like that, that becomes unreasonable and illogical. Nutters. It's not overstating it at all.
Welcome to the first Left Hemispheres podcast.
Huzzah!
Doctor?
This is Steve.
This is Adam.
This is Nick.
And this is Jack. This being our first podcast, I think we should probably explain what we're trying to do that's separate from the blog.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I see this as an extension of the blog, but, separate. I mean, most of the things that we talk about on here aren't going to be on the blog, or they'll be mentioned in passing.
Yeah, they'll show up in the FLD or...
Yeah.
Right. But, there are topics that come up they're kind of pertinent as they have been, but because of restrictions with time and everything, you can't always throw something up on the blog about it
or sit down and really elaborate about it on the blog. This is more of a free-form roundtable kind of thing.
Exactly. It's not easily condensable into 1,500 words or something.
There are some things that you just want to crack wise about, and leave it at that.
There is that.
Not necessarily devote yourself to an entire series of paragraphs.
Yeah, because that takes time.
And we have lives.
There's also going to be your fascinating interview series, so...
Right. Which I got the opportunity to interview Taylor Muse from Quiet Company last night.
Which will be up not too long after this goes.
That's very cool.
Very cool.
It was a lot of fun. Very easy to get along with. Very easy to interview. Wish I'd had more time with him. They were playing a show last night, and of course, he has a family and everything, so he's trying to work that in as well.
Why don't we just jump right into it then?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the only way we're going to get through this is to just do it.
Yeah, I'm kind of working in reverse order here because it wasn't more than 20 minutes ago that Nick sent through this thing about school vouchers.
Right.
Which I'm going to go ahead and make the first thing.
I grabbed that out of the email, the Humanist Network News email that I sent that off for us to kind of discuss because Steve and I had discussed vouchers briefly the other day. It's something that is pushing into more and more states, a separation of church and state issue, I think on the large part.
Yeah, this came about, Nick and I's discussion. I sent everybody that link on progressive libertarianism. And they're not a party or anything. It's just basically like a different kind of libertarianism than the Ayn Randian objectivists. Nutters. And one of the things that they're proponents of school vouchers, and not that you have to agree with everything every political party or whatever says, but I have a real problem with school vouchers because I think that they're a backdoor way for the religious to use taxpayer money to teach religion. And Nick actually had a good observation I never thought of. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, Nick.
Well, in addition, even if you were to eliminate the church-state issue that comes into play with it, there are still other components of it that people don't tend to think about, which is that there are a lot of regulations that public schools have to follow, like for admissions and things that these private schools specifically, and charter schools, voucher schools, whatever, don't have to follow. If a public school has room for 500 kids and 700 kids enroll in that school, well, guess what? That school district is going to be renting trailers to teach out of because they don't have the right to turn people away like that. That's one issue. That if a private school, if the
They can afford. They can basically dictate who they want to take.
Well, exactly, and that has to do with there's students that have behavioral issues, learning disabilities,
Minorities.
just minorities,
Real.
just the kids who are the top of the class. Basically, they can bring in academic ringers.
Yeah.
See, minorities actually brings in an interesting side to that. Like, I mean, there are possible beneficial outcomes, which I think is where people hit sticking points on something like this. Like, if you have a school in, say, Kensington, which is a completely shit school district. I mean, the roads are barely paved there. There's just no money in Kensington, Philadelphia, right? You have a place like that, you could see where a very dedicated stay-at-home mom could probably teach her kids better than the high school system that's in place.
And she could afford it.
Yeah, well, that's the uneven distribution of taxpayer funds for the school districts. I mean, it's more than one issue. It's not a simple issue. I'm not trying to say that,
right, because that's a property tax.
Everybody that is a proponent of vouchers secretly wants to get, their little Dominionist Christian school going or something like that. I mean, I don't believe that. I'm just saying it's a lot of the proponents are for that, but not all of them, because there's just school districts that are just bad, like really bad.
Mm-hmm. That was the issue with DC, and that was one of the things that the right has gone after Obama about was that he ended the school vouchers in the District of Columbia, and
how did he do that though? That seems like something that would have to be done by Congress, because everything that goes
a magic Negro
goes on.
Sorry, continue.
Well, that's it. Well, I mean, how much of the rhetoric that comes out of the right is really sensical? I mean,
right, by definition. One of the interesting things about this article, though, is that Representative Valerie Hodge also discovered that the law might include taxpayer support of Muslim schools, and then everybody freaked out.
Oh yeah, that was Valerie Hodges. She flipped out. That was a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
I mean, that was hysterical. I would have done like the random quotes on it, except for everyone else beat me to it just because I was busy that day. It was so hilarious. I mean, the Onion couldn't have written a better response than what she actually provided in reality. I did not vote for so Muslim schools get the same treatment.
Yeah, it was Betty Bowers-esque. This was not meant, this was so that we could teach, our God in school, not so that they could teach their God in schools on the taxpayer dime.
Which incidentally is the reason that there is no official prayer in school anyway. When the Catholics were arguing with the Protestants over which God they were going to teach, we actually have the Catholics and Protestants to thank for that. Nobody remembers it, of course.
No, because now they're all just one big happy family of Christianity.
You hear those arguments from people like David Barton saying things like.
It doesn't work when it's not in print, Steve.
Sorry, that's my.
They're always saying he's always saying stuff like, you've got all these founding fathers who are saying that the Bible should be taught in school. Well, realistically, it wasn't so much the Bible. It was just that was the only book that was in print on a regular basis, and you needed to teach kids to read.
Right.
Well,
it was the only book a lot of people had in their house.
There are more reasons than just the it's separation of church and state issues that are bad about vouchers, but the loudest voices that are out there pushing for vouchers are those who are trying to get money for their fly-by-night diploma mill Christian school.
Indoctrination camp.
Yeah. Christian gulag.
It's not overstating it at all.
But that does lead into the other story that we had that popped up. It was either today or yesterday from Andy over at Laughing in Purgatory with the Louisiana school districts have decided to teach that whales are fish.
No. See, the thing is, with anything with Andy, you have to take with a grain of salt.
Now, in very small print at the end, it does tell you that the story is fiction, which makes it the perfect example of Poe's law.
Yeah, he does a great job of basically writing stuff that you just can't tell. I mean, basically like an atheist disinformation center. He got picked up by the Richard Dawkins Foundation because he wrote something a couple weeks back that was real funny, that Richard Dawkins was actually banned in the state of Mississippi.
What's brilliant about that is that it really does play on genuine American history, right? Like, I mean, that's like Ray Charles getting banned in Georgia.
Yeah, and he comes up with believable things, and then there's hints in his stuff that it's not real. Yeah, like the first comment here on his Louisiana school district to teach students that whales are fish is please, this has to be a parody. Just people desperate to find out that it's not real.
So I think somebody else says that they had to go back and reread the disclaimer again because they weren't sure if it actually was real or not. Because at this point, you can see it happen. I mean, it's as insane as it sounds. It's completely believable that they would actually do that in Louisiana or Mississippi, right, or anywhere really. I mean, the South gets picked on a lot, and for good reasons and for bad reasons. But let's not forget that the biggest creationist lawsuit that ever occurred was in Dover, PA. Holy crap. We'll get a little bit back on topic for the podcast. Yeah, the Friendly Atheist just dropped a few Paul Ryan memes that are just absolutely incredible. You guys are familiar with like the baby goose Ryan Gosling meme? Yeah. Okay. Well, now they're doing the Paul Ryan Gosling. It's like, hey girl, I love your body, I just don't trust you with it. And then there's another, hey girl, all this talk of rape has me down in the dumps. Can we just agree I'm right and move on?
Oh wow.
Oh.
So, Todd Aiken. This isn't strictly an atheist issue, but it needs addressing.
Well, this doesn't have to be a strictly an atheist podcast. I mean, you know what I mean?
So the left is there for a reason, right?
Are we atheist plus? Oh, did I just bring that up? Yes, I did.
Yeah,
we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute.
Star-bellied Sneeches.
Star-bellied Sneeches. I love that.
That is by far the best. You should just post that.
There's a YouTube video. I'll put it in the show notes. The Star-bellied Sneeches YouTube video.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah.
Do. That kills me every single time you say that. Yeah, but anyway, Representative Aiken. I am elated. I cannot reiterate how much I'm elated that he refuses to drop out, because even the right has recoiled in horror. Not that they disagree, probably, just that it's now known and people are like, what the fuck is going on over there?
Well, right, most of their comments towards him, from the GOP or the conservatives, what have you, have been more of the, hey, why don't you drop out? And in fact,
Romney told him to drop out, and I really think that that's going to be, if he doesn't drop out, that's going to adversely affect Romney, because there goes his ability to lead, right?
He doesn't have any ability. The presumed ability to lead.
And Ann Coulter, actually, she had tweeted out, I think, that Aiken was the most selfish man in the history of the GOP or something like that for refusing to bow out of the race.
That's a big claim.
Yeah, really.
Yes, it is.
You got a bunch of Ayn Rand disciples, and you're going to call him the most selfish one?
Hey, you're not allowed in the right-wing media noise machine unless you make grand, idiotic, completely unsubstantiated comments. I mean, that's what they do.
The problem is one of the reasons that they're so successful is because they're so organized, because they are one mind. And in this case, when somebody goes that far out, the hive has to cut them off. And
yeah, I mean, all he did was really just talk about.
They're just not used to dissent within their own ranks. They don't know what to do with it. Liberals argue amongst themselves all the time because they have to decide which tree to hug. But when it comes to Republicans, they all pretty much have that hive mind that they just can't escape it. And this guy is really willing to just take down the whole place with him.
The hive mind thing, it brought up kind of to me the whole claim that the right has about that Americans are conservative, predominantly conservative, and that's why like conservative talk radio works, and it's been going so strong, and why liberal or left-wing radio like Air America has not worked. And I think it has more to do with the fact that those on the left really just don't like hearing. They don't like listening to themselves talk.
Well, I think the left generally has the same problem that atheists do. It's herding cats. You have a bunch of people with disparate opinions,
Right.
Under a much bigger tent, but you can't get them to come to any kind of consensus. That what the right has going for them in terms of winning elections in the system that's set up in the United States is that they're lockstep authoritarian. It's very top down as opposed to bottom up.
Let's not forget that as far as right-wing radio is concerned, it's also free for tons and tons of radio stations across the country as space filler. So a lot of these old radio stations have been broadcasting, Rush Limbaugh, for example, simply because it's offered free and they need to fill airtime. So that influence is far and reaches far and wide, but part of that is because it's just economical.
Yeah.
Because it's a winning ideology. It just happens to be a winning business strategy.
Let's talk about some good news. There was an article from NBC News. Norton Schwartz, before his retirement, put through a new dictate for the Air Force.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no more proselytize, no more gospel.
Yeah, they're making it an offense to promote your personal religion to subordinates.
Now they just got to get that in the other services, and
It's improvement. I like the way they couched that article, though. It was the title was Air Force Rules Limit Size of Tattoos, Roll of Gospel. And if I look through it, because I have lots of tattoos, the size of tattoo limit was it couldn't be more than 25% of the body part, provided you can see it when you're in uniform, which is like
Your whole head.
Yeah, you can't walk in with a Mike Tyson tattoo and join the Air Force, but
you have to remember though that the PT uniform, the workout uniform, is also considered a uniform.
That's what I was
so
saying.
so if it shows, and those shorts generally come to, I don't know, just a little bit above the knee.
But do you have the option to wear sweatpants?
Yeah.
Because, in sweatpants and a T-shirt, I passed that.
Well, in the Marine Corps, everyone had to wear the same thing. So if it was a cold day and you wanted to wear sweatpants, everybody had to be wearing sweatpants.
Oh, so it becomes kind of a group mentality thing.
It's a uniformity issue. Right. And that's when I came into the Marine Corps, they had just, I think the year before, so that would have been 1997, they had just passed the rule where you could not have any tattoos that showed in the service uniform, the Bravo service uniform, which basically was a long sleeve dress shirt with a button-up collar and tie and dress pants. So you're forbidden from having anything basically below your wrist, on your hands,
and above
or
your
anything,
neck. Yeah.
or anything that would show above the collar. So no more head tattoos. No more knuckle tattoos. And other than that, the rules were no racist tattoos, no gang-related tattoos, things like that.
That's still in there.
Yeah.
But that goes without saying.
But after I got out of the Marine Corps, then they changed the regulations where it could not be seen in a PT uniform. So that's the tattoo. I only have one tattoo, I think, that would show that would not conform with those standards now. I have one on my right calf, but the rest of my tattoos.
Ironically, isn't that a Marine Corps tattoo?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, but that is funny how that the title of that was. I laughed at that too, Jack. That regulates the size of tattoos, and by the way, the rule of gospel.
Yeah, by the way, they're not allowed to preach Jesus. Just saying.
Did you see that there's also in the related, if you're looking at that article, Marine werewolves transform into crusaders and back again, which was another church-state issue where there was I think it was an air wing It was an aviation unit, and they had been called the Crusaders. I guess it was fixed wing because they had actually named themselves after the Crusader, which was a aircraft that was used in World War II. And then they decided to change it. They changed it to the Werewolves. And then a fundamentalist commanding officer came in and was like, "Oh no, this has to be the Crusaders again." I believe the insignia that they actually painted on the planes then was basically of a Crusader knight, with a very prominent cross, and I guess they've changed it back again. Military Religious Freedom Foundation fought a lawsuit.
All right, the other thing that I had that was vaguely politics related. I don't know if you guys have seen this yet because it just came across me about a half an hour before we started recording. Over at The Friendly Atheist has video of Dan Savage versus Brian Brown, the head of NAM.
Yeah, I have not yet seen that.
I'm about halfway through it, and then it came time to start doing the show. From what I've seen so far, Dan Savage just destroys the guy.
Awesome.
I didn't get a chance to watch that either. I looked at the post that Friendly Atheist had up, and he mentions that the only harm that the guy he's debating can actually come up with is that it redefines marriage. That's the only thing. You can't actually come up with any harms from allowing gay marriage.
Other than semantics, yeah.
Right.
Around 2006, we redefined planet, and everybody was just fine with that.
Neil deGrasse Tyson! Shakes fist.
Yeah. Redefining planets, it's against Jeebus.
There was a Big Bang Theory episode where...
Hey, you can, Jack, you'll just have to cut this, but I saw this on Joe My God. Ann Coulter just wrote regarding Representative Aiken, and I quote, "Short of an untimely hunting accident, a writing campaign is the only way out of this mess." So, yeah, leave it to Ann to, you know what the thing is like, I bet you she just actually does not give a shit about what he said. It's just the fact that it's adversely affecting their narrative.
Mm-hmm.
So should Aiken be expecting a call from Dick Cheney sometime soon?
Yeah, hey, buddy, you want to go hunting? All right, so do you want to get the Atheism Plus mess out of the way, or what? And Nick, let's not really drag it out.
Why do you point to me?
You hear that, Nick?
I know I'm the one who wrote about it, but hey.
Have I been a little forward in my feelings on Atheism Plus?
Well, so have I. I just always expect you to go off on a rant.
Yeah.
As we all and everybody knows, Atheism Plus was put forward by Jen McCrate from Free Thought Blogs, and
I guess unsurprisingly, every other Free Thought blogger just ate it up.
Communist did not.
Yes, he did.
Nah,
I read the same thing as you, and I don't see the difference.
I have to agree there. I don't think that he completely ate it up. I think that he agrees that the concept itself is not a bad idea, but he seemed to recognize how ridiculous it is.
Okay, well, the majority.
Right. I mean, no one has come out and said, no, this is a bad idea, or I'm not a big fan of this on Free Thought Blogs. Everyone who's talked about it has, either been, maybe with the exception of Crimus, who's kind of fence-sitting, I think, a little bit on it, everyone else has been over-fucking-joyed.
I think...
No, I wouldn't say Digital Cuttlefish is overjoyed.
No,
I would say
you're right.
Digital Cuttlefish is sort of resigned, and I don't know, man. I mean, to tell you the truth, until they block quoted me, in my post about it, I'd never read Digital Cuttlefish before. I would say that they're supportive, but there's a restraint to it. And the funny thing, one of the commenters on my post from Monday, has been defending it, and I wouldn't say they're not defending it now, but I think they were taken aback by my post from today, quoting Richard Carrier, because quite honestly, his comments to me are beyond the pale. Mm-hmm. The way he lashes out against anybody that's not on board. I mean, it really is just I don't think he's helping their cause. I may not agree with it, but I don't think it's the worst thing in the world if they wanted to set themselves up as a subset. You know what I mean? Like, Greta was pretty forceful in that it's not a redefinition, and so this kind of happened after a lot of the pushback. It's not a redefinition; we're a subset.
Was this Greta's article from today? By the way, everybody, today's Wednesday. This isn't going to go up until like Saturday. So,
by the way, everybody, this is Wednesday, August 22nd.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I didn't. I don't know if I read Greta's today, but I think it was Greta's article from yesterday. That she said for the millionth, billionth, trillionth time, it's not a redefinition of atheism, which I don't think. I actually think is somewhat of a misdirection or a misunderstanding on their part. In my post, I'm not arguing that they're trying to redefine it. I'm arguing that they're going to confuse it.
If they're not trying to redefine it, then why call it a third wave of atheism? Or atheism plus. I mean, that's kind of self-contradictory, I think.
No, it is. I think there's. Well, this is going to sound like a weird comparison, but I think it's pretty apt. A couple weeks ago, when the left accused Ann Romney of never having worked a day in her life, and she said, "No, I was a stay-at-home mom, and goddamn it, that's a job." It's kind of the same argument in a way. There's that kind of weird uber feminist argument that wants women out of the house and into the workplace, and women who want to stay at home are somehow shunned as not
right
working when they are. The Atheist Plus movement seems to come off as, well, if you're not supporting all these things, then you're not as good of an atheist as we are,
Well, I think, Richard Carrier's comments clearly articulate that.
Well, and
he tries to walk it back in his comments later after I posted. I mean, he's not addressing me, but other people. I updated it, by the way, with additional comments on his where now he's labeling people as enemies. I mean, it just...
Right. I haven't been back much over there today, but
I have not read this much free thought blogs in like a fucking year. I'm just serious. Like, I never hated them before. They just kind of like, I don't really want to deal with them. I've never read it as much as I have in the past 3 damn days, and I'm sick of it. So once we talk about this, I'm hoping I don't never have to mention it again.
It is the swirling vortex.
Yeah, I made this comment to Adam. Free thought blogs to me, and I don't think everybody over there is a bad person, and I don't think most of them are. There's a lot of, I think, confirmation bias that goes on, but I made the analogy. Free thought blogs to me is a black hole. It's a swirling mass of, drama, basically, a lot of the time. And I was the one who said, I don't really want to talk about anything that comes out of free thought blogs on left hemispheres. And, of course, I'm the one that breaks that rule. Yeah, because
the only one who makes rules is the only one who consistently breaks them.
Yeah, well, that's not even really a rule, just like, hey.
No, yeah.
But, you cross over to I never wanted to get so close to them that I'd cross over the event horizon and just get sucked in. Like, and just people that get sucked into the drama with them. I don't want to spend the entire time arguing about that bullshit with them.
Right.
So that's
well, and if you allow yourself to get sucked in, especially if you go over there and make comments on the blog about like PZ Myers, you're going to have a horde of flying monkeys.
So far, we occupy a very small corner of the atheist sphere. Fine with that. And, I think we escaped some of that because, quite frankly, we're not like the biggest blog in the world, whatever. So I don't think we get noticed by the grand atheist pope.
Who has said almost nothing about this.
No, he has said nothing about this.
Yeah.
Next the second.
It seems kind of a staying above the fray thing to me. But I find it interesting. After the Thunderfoot fiasco, they have this back channel where all kinds of conversations go on.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, we do that too.
Yeah, but it seems to me that, if you're going to present an idea like this, and and everyone knows that this back channel exists, they're kind of coming at it from, well, we already talked about this.
Right. Well, it's like Credit Christina, her post was up pretty quick. It was kind of on the heels of Jim McCrate's.
Yeah, and I'd feel less like it was an orchestrated effort to just assert themselves into a position of hierarchy in the culture. If that back channel, like if they were showing us how the sausage was made in the first place, like if they were having that discussion out in the open, that'd be one thing.
No, they released it as sort of like this developed product for their consumers.
Right, and so now it's like Atheism Plus, buy the T-shirt, ride the ride.
And you laugh, but that's one of the things that Jen McCrate said in her second post on it. I mean, she said, I asked for the next steps of how to get rid of the garbage. I'll make another post on that idea soon. I don't think it needs an official name. I want to improve the atheist movement, not create a splinter faction or something. But it's fabulous marketing wise, and as a way to identify yourself as a progressive atheist or whatever term you want to use. I know I'd love for people to start wearing A+ pins and surly Ramics, so I know who I want to chat with.
Just offensive. And that kind of ties into like what I was talking about before the show with the Atheist !+ group for just agnostics.
Yeah.
What strikes me as unnecessarily divisive about that is that secular humanism doesn't exclude agnostics and deists, and I mean reasonably, deism is just as intellectually defensible position as atheism is.
Right.
If you want to hold that position, I can't fault you for it, but and to exclude those people from social causes seems completely unnecessary.
Right. Well, look at Barry Lind. He's a minister, right? Are we going to cut him off as an ally? Are we going to say that he can't possibly be?
I don't know, because I do think that I've read some of the stuff on Free Thought where they're okay to work with some interface stuff. So I don't know if this is a really defensible criticism of them, because I don't know if that's really developed, that they're just not going to. It'll be that insular. But what I do think is a problem is their swift boating of secular humanism.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, I mean, there are groups of secular humanism that are less than. I think that's what the communist was talking about. They're not exemplars of secularness or anything like that, or just like they're not as anti-religion as an atheist would be. But since when has anybody really considered secular humanism quasi-religious? Not until this.
Right.
Like, all of a sudden, there's all this criticism coming out of FTB about how secular humanism isn't adequate enough. I never heard boo about that before fucking Sunday.
Well, and they're usually not even saying secular humanism; they're just saying humanism. They're trying to divorce.
They're
equivocating.
Secular.
Right.
They're equivocating. Prevaricating. They're misrepresenting it on purpose, and that's what pisses me off.
It's intellectually dishonest.
It really is. It's just as open to social justice and critical thought. The cover on Friendly Atheist today had a post about the cover of the Humanist magazine as The Secular Women Are Coming. If you look at the subtitle of the magazine, it says The Humanist, a magazine of critical inquiry and social concern. For fuck's sake. They're just reverse engineering the rationalization that secular humanism isn't adequate enough.
Well, exactly. And the American Humanist Association, I pulled this up kind of in anticipation of this discussion. The American Humanist Association is, I guess, 71, 72 years old now. They have had, since 1977, they have had a feminist caucus that deals specifically with, pushing for ERA legislation, Universal Declaration of Human Rights. These people have failed to get involved, and now they want to make it their own thing. I mean, that's fine. I mean, new organizations start up all the time, and there are plenty of organizations that overlap.
That's why I just don't see
American Atheist sues, the ACLU sues, FRF sues. They on church-state violations and things. They all overlap, and they all have their function. And the American Humanist Association even does legal action like that as well. But yeah, it really kind of. And actually, when I had my interview with Taylor Muse, I brought up because I wanted to talk to him about his humanism, because that's what he most strongly. When somebody asks, "What are you?" he says that he's a humanist, right? Because his take on it was when somebody asks you that question, they're trying to get at your ethics, to know who you are. And if you answer, I'm an atheist, well, you don't know anything about that person except that they have a lack of belief in gods.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what I argue in my It's Just Atheism post.
Right.
The first one from about a month ago, and then the second one, which is completely a reaction to A+.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and here's another little skeptic. I forget who the writer was. Was it somebody that I heard before? Their post today was, "I've earned that grade, A+." I mean, come on. There's a certain level of just real pretentiousness to the whole damn thing, and like a superiority. And I mean, you can see it. Like Richard Carrier, I mean, he just fucking drank the Kool-Aid,
right?
And you can see it with everything that he's saying. Like he drank the Kool-Aid about how it's superior.
Right.
It's not a subset that people can join to do social justice action, which if it was that, I would have I just don't believe them.
Right. It's inherently, we're more atheisty than you.
Yeah, we're more better atheisty.
That's why the Bellied Sneeches thing is funny.
And I don't know if you guys saw, but someone just posted they're a new atheist, and all this depresses the shit out of them, basically.
Yeah.
Like they're just looking into the community, and this was my argument the entire time. The reason, like I wanted to protect the definition of atheism for a couple of reasons, and it boils down to you don't believe in God, and there's no ideology to it. Like you were saying, Taylor, we've all said this. Taylor Muse said it. It doesn't tell you anything other than the fact that you don't believe in God. I understand the point of A+ is to add things to it, but I don't think that's really that defensible. It separates people. It doesn't bring people together.
Yeah, it's inherently divisive.
Yeah.
And really, you have to question how much backing they have for the position. You can't say. I have a hard time thinking that atheism inherently leads to liberal social justice ideologies. I'm not saying that they're wrong per se, but at the same time, I can understand an atheist making an argument for
objectivism, relativism, whatever. That's the problem.
Even dualism, for that matter.
Scientology.
But yeah, that's the thing. Like, I don't agree with Penn Jillette. You know what I mean? On a lot of things. And actually, there's things that he said that I highly disagree with, and I think he's an asshole for. And he's part of that, like, objectivist libertarian bent of atheism. But the thing is, it's like not all of the people are like as blunt as he is, or as sort of, kind of unconcerned about certain things as he is, that even fit in that camp. But they'll just push those people aside as lesser than. Atheism, lesser than. It's just completely divisive, and it'll get us nowhere except for that post that I came up with, and Andy and I talked about, and he wrote for us. Well, I said on Monday or yesterday, how fucking prophetic is that? Because that was last week, and then this bomb dropped on Sunday. The whole A+ thing. It's completely accurate, and this is where we're going. We're no better than the Protestant and Catholic in terms of like division and infighting.
Well, I think that's one of the biggest problems with this is that it kind of has an authoritarian bent to it, where here's the rules. You either believe this or you're not a part of us.
Yeah, the whole thing with atheism, and this is one of the few times that I would agree with Nick, is that it's better as an anarchy. But I mean, I don't subscribe to anarchy as a political idea. I don't think it's wrong or evil. It's not something I've bought into. Nick and I have talked about this at great length over the past couple of years. But I think atheism is better as sort of like an anarchy, where it just
non-hierarchical.
Yeah, just leave it alone. It'll be its own thing, because that's the most inclusive thing, and then everything can splinter off from there.
Well, even the concept of an atheist community is still relatively new. I mean, if it wasn't for social media, there probably would not be anything remotely resembling an atheist community, just because they're so interspersed and because the population of atheists is so small, even globally. So you have this group that finally has some form of cohesion, and as soon as you get that, then of course you get splinters because you're herding cats. and you get a bunch of people.
Splinters are going to happen. Yeah, you're right. it's natural, but there's, in my opinion, obviously we're already seeing it, and it's not just Richard Carey. You could see it in the comment section of all these posts over at Free Thought. It's very divisive. If you're not with it's a whole like Jesus Christ, a bunch of little atheist George Bushes. If you're not with it, you're against us. I mean, that's all I hear.
Yeah, and there's just it just seems like there's things that atheism doesn't particularly need to be tied to. Starting an atheist feminist group, to me, okay, if you really want to, fine. But I wouldn't go out and start an atheist rock climbing club. That just seems silly.
Feminism doesn't need,
They've got nothing to do with each other.
feminism doesn't need atheism.
Right.
So why are atheism need feminism?
Well, and the left and those organizations, whether feminist organizations or GLBT organizations, have basically told us over and over again that they don't need us. That a lot of gays are much more accepted in the atheist community than atheists are accepted in the gay community.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
People will say that over and over again. I mean, it's not true of every corner of either community,
There's
but
still a lot of overlap.
right. But
Atheist.
yeah,
Well, there's a lot of. I think that points to the amount of stigma that still applies to the term, right? Like,
Well, exactly.
atheists.
I do have to disagree with the analogy. I think it's a false analogy of the atheist feminist versus and atheist rock climbing.
Okay.
Personally, I think there's like atheist rock climbing. It's like that makes no sense. I do think atheist feminism to a degree makes sense just because of how misogynistic religion is. I mean, I understand what you mean by that, but I think it's got a little more legs to it to say.
Well, I get what you're saying, but I think that's largely because of which religions are in control.
True.
Right?
It's
I mean,
culture that's misogynistic. Religions are
see, this
extensions
is
of
where
that culture.
like, if boil it back to.
I think if we lived in a culture that was 74% Wiccan, then it would be the exact opposite problem.
The blog probably wouldn't exist because we wouldn't give a shit.
No, I'd give a shit because really, I mean,
That's true. It would still bother me. As a quick aside, Left Hemispheres started off with a very different mission, and then within like a week, just became like an antitheist mess. And saying that is okay. So maybe atheist feminism doesn't make much sense if from the way you're saying it. That's okay. I can buy that. And it goes back to my argument of a lot of what people call atheism is antitheism. Okay, you don't believe in God. That's fine, but whatever. Well, I fucking hate religion. I think it's destructive and all every negative connotation you can attach to it. That's not atheism. It's antitheism. You're against the belief in God because you think it's negative.
And
So
it's
there's that
easy
whole component to it as well. Yeah.
It's easy for the narrative to do that, though, to say that the only reason you don't believe is because you hate it. It's just easier to swallow than to say that there's some other reason that you don't believe.
No, because I didn't believe first.
Of course.
It was only later on that I was like, you know what? This is quite destructive.
the problem with that antitheism has is, at least in terms of the opposition arguing against it, given that they have a captive audience, is they have a much easier time saying, well, they just hate you, as opposed to, well, no, we have, logical evidence that demonstrates that what you think doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, I'm just saying that it's a better term for that level of opposition to religion. I'm not really to say any value judgment about it. And the other thing I dislike, I guess I'm coming out as a big semantic nerd the past week. I dislike the hyphen in between anti and theism. For me, for some reason, it makes me think that I'm not anti-theists. I'm anti-theism.
Right.
I'm against the belief in God. Most people are fine, whether or not they believe or not.
It's like you should be an anti-theologist.
Ooh.
No, that's different.
Yeah.
Because theology is the study of religion and apologetics and all that, happy horse shit.
Didn't we have the discussion about the anti-fideist thing before too?
Yeah, because I wrote a post called "The Anti-Faithist," and you said "anti-theist." I was like, "Yeah, well, nobody know what that meant." If I titled it that, it would just be like, "Oh, head scratch."
Because who would know that? Well, let's move on from A+.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we've discussed this enough.
Yeah.
think we
Also,
Yeah, and he knows it'll be a click thing that won't last forever. And it's a bit more difficult when you're enveloped in it, I suppose.
yeah. I mean, I do. I mean, I think it'll fail, but
I think it'll be just like the Brights thing, you know. Dennett's greatest regret is probably the Brights thing.
I think it's disingenuous when people say that an atheist doesn't have certain connotations to it. You know, like they're saying that, well, you know, atheism is just atheism. The dictionary atheist argument, or the argument against the dictionary atheist argument, is that just saying you're an atheist, all it says is you don't believe in God. Well, it's not really just saying you don't believe in God. It's saying you don't believe in God, you don't believe in an afterlife, and that kind of... I don't know if you guys ever saw that well, not saw, but heard the Pendulet NPR This I Believe
No, I haven't.
routine.
No.
I'll put it in the notes, but it's this brilliant thing where he says, I believe there is no God, which means I believe that this is the only life I get, and I better make it a good one. And that, to me, was always a very liberating thing about atheism, was this is your one shot, you better make the most of it.
I mean, yeah, that's a good
very
point.
short ride.
That's a good point. And yeah, me as the I guess the quintessential dictionary atheist around here, and that's a good point against, you know, some of my argument. But it still doesn't mean you can just append any.
No, it means that there is other things that come along with atheism other than just the dictionary argument.
True.
I mean, but those things all apply to woo and the supernatural and that kind of thing.
Right. Well, not exactly woo. I can't tell you how many damn atheists in my Twitter timeline tweet astrology.
Homeopathy seems to be one that doesn't quite escape the boundaries of...
Less so, but yes. I'm always blown away by the astrology, and I don't want to unfollow them because they're generally decent people, but Jesus. But again, that's not atheism, that's skepticism. And they're really, you know, it's the whole, you know...
Well, then you go back to, you know, the examples that I talked about before with the Raelism and Scientology and even the atheist Buddhists.
Yeah.
You know, I mean...
Siddhartha was
there's
an atheist.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of woo involved in those three things. You know, you can't get more woo than the guy on the Ancient Aliens with the hair. I can't remember his name is. You know, and he's one of the Raelian people. And according to what the Raelian people believe, they are atheists, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the very least, it doesn't come up.
Not talked about at dinner parties.
Well, the Scientology mythology and the Raelian mythology doesn't quite get past where humans came from. They don't branch out into where those other aliens came from, which is kind of the same argument. It's kind of the same argument. It's the same as the first mover argument, right? Mm-hmm. Like, well, where the fuck did they come from?
What existed before the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Scientology does not address creation.
No.
Whatsoever. I did, to be honest, I don't know much about Raelian anything, but I know they exist. And I know they're kooks.
They're basically the people that say that there was a reptilian race that tinkered with our DNA.
Oh, the lizard.
And there are some people, especially a lot of the leaders throughout history, who have some of this Raelian DNA. You know, like the British royal family, the Bushes,
Robert England.
Yeah,
Robert England.
I'm going to Google famous Raelians in
Israeli.
When I'd been at Rock Beyond Belief, I had the 3 questions that I had asked Dawkins, and the last one got cut off, which was the best of all of them.
Yeah.
And it was about if a fundamentalist Christian is elected as president, how do you see that affecting the non-theist movement? And if that happens, can I come live with you?
Yeah, that was my question, right?
Right. And he answered the first part. He never answered the second part. So the other night on Facebook, Sean Faircloth he had posted something up, and something about Paul Ryan. And I said, hey, I brought up that because he was there too. He was part of that press conference.
Yeah.
I said, hey, I asked this question. Dawkins dodged, answering my second question. Can you get an answer for me? And he said, sure, you can live with Dawkins. I'm sure he'd have no problem with me approving this. I think we'll just turn Dawkins' house into an Enlightenment commune. Like a refugee center for enlightened Americans.
Can I just say about Paul Ryan, what kind of lack of grasp of satire do you have to be Paul Ryan and like Rage Against the Machine?
I know.
Oh no.
Adam, you did not know this?
You knew it?
He was asked what his favorite band was, and he said Rage Against the Machine. Tom Morello nearly had a fucking aneurysm.
And rightfully so. After he said that, I went back and I watched the Sleep Now in the Fire video, and I'm just like, I could understand how he would think that this was not accusatory. And thinking that's like, yeah.
The old white guy, and they're like, this is my way of sticking it to the man, and they're like, oh, aren't you the man?
He is the machine that they rage against, is what Morello basically said. Yeah, that's just comedy right there.
I hope that the extreme right never goes away, because I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to laugh as hard if they do. They're gone. There's a lot to laugh about on the left, but the gut chuckles that I get from listening to these idiots.
I try to imagine what a radical left would actually look like, because you get the characterizations if you read or watch enough of the right wing stuff, which is usually very far from being accurate. That they're hugging every tree and they're trying to understand every terrorist. But what would an actual radical left really look like?
Norway.
Scandinavian countries, right?
The horror that is Scandinavia.
Their healthcare,
with their healthcare and their
education,
and their good education
and their food for starving children.
Well, I think we covered everything I have on. Well, we didn't really talk too much about this Romney Whitehorse thing.
Well,
which I found terribly interesting in a
it is
dominionist kind of way.
Not that I wouldn't want to talk about it, but that is our 2 or 3 time guest. Geez, I don't know how many times he's written a guest post. Jason sent that to me, and we're going to probably co-author a Dominionist post, because there is a lot more to Mormon Dominionism than people realize, which is something that Jason and I had talked about for almost a year now. We were kind of considering what to do the past couple of months. Not that
for those of you just now tuning in, this is not the Alex Jones show.
Read the Dominionism series on Left Hemispheres, and you'll know what the hell I'm talking about.
And if you ever stop canning goods in your basement after reading it,
don't do it. Don't do it. Hey, most of those sources are straight from the horse's mouth.
The white horse's mouth?
The white horse's fucking mouth.
Why I think I'd be the white horse.
I don't know, Token.
That's cool, Kimosabi. Anyway, that the White Horse Prophecy is probably going to be part of a source on Mormon Dominions. And there's one thing that I would recommend you guys and everybody else to go look up is the Utah War.
Could someone explain what the White Horse Prophecy is for those of us who did not read the article?
Well, the White Horse Prophecy doesn't actually necessarily have anything to do with the article, but goes to the Revelation quote, I saw a rider on a pale horse and his name was Death.
Oh, right.
Okay. One of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse kind of thing. It's the entire Bill Hicks rant about having a fundamentalist Christian as president and having his finger on the button, you know?
Right.
There's in Mormonism, according to this article, there's a prophecy that one day there would be a Mormon president, and that he will basically bring the country in line with Mormonism.
Yep.
That he will be the savior, because it says here that there will come a day when the U.S. Constitution would hang like a thread as fine as a silk fiber, and the Mormon priesthood would save it. And apparently during his college days, he was one of the people that, Mittens was talked about as, that possible person.
Wait. There's not more Mormons than black people, are there?
It depends which state.
Damn it.
In Utah.
Yes.
Well, everybody, that's it for us this episode. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to email them to lefthemispheres@gmail.com. And you could really help us out by subscribing and rating the podcast in iTunes. That would be great if you feel free. Thanks.
And like the blog.
Tell your friends.
Share it with your grandmother.
She'll be horrified. It's okay.
Share it with Paul Ryan.